Hello, and I hope you're having a great day, and welcome to today's webinar. And we're going to be talking about whether you're the bottleneck to your business growth today. My name is Michael Gunther, and I'm the founder and senior consultant at Collaboration Business Consulting. And it's been interesting over the last 20 years. I've been able to work with over 500 businesses, help close to 300 businesses get started, and work with thousands of leaders. And there's often this, what I call the roller coaster syndrome that happens, that these entrepreneurs who all of a sudden are growing their business, they have to make a shift to become a different type of leader. And the skill sets and the way they manage as an entrepreneur isn't working anymore. And I call it the roller coaster syndrome because you see these companies go up in growth, and then they come back down, and then they come up, and they come back down. They never can seem to have that breakthrough performance. In fact, our mission is to inspire, educate, and empower these leaders to achieve breakthrough performance and try to break that roller coaster syndrome so that they can have scalable and sustainable profitable growth for their business. And so when you think about being the bottleneck and to evaluate whether you're the bottleneck in your business, there are certain symptoms that we often see that are present that are preventing these businesses from scaling. One of the first bottlenecks we see is that the leaders are involved in every decision. Can we spend $200 to go to this event? Hey, we need more supplies over here. Whatever it may be, that the leader is involved in every decision. And so as you grow, that's just not scalable. When you're smaller and as an entrepreneur, you can do that. In fact, it's kind of this energy that comes with it that a lot of times entrepreneurs or leaders assume being the decision maker and being in that crisis mode is where they need to be playing. In fact, sometimes they kind of like it because people are coming to them to solve everything, but it ends up causing this bottleneck. Another symptom is that we often hear these business leaders talk that they feel that their team lacks ownership, that these individuals on their team aren't willing to take ownership of responsibility, to make decisions. They feel like everybody's coming to them. Well, the reality is it's often because you as the leader are not trusting or building the right environment to allow them to have ownership. And in addition to that, I've seen one of the aspects of this being about perfectionism, is that often these owners want perfectionism versus actually getting things done and moving things forward. And as you know, I hope, is that there's no such thing as perfectionism, but it causes this issue of the symptom of team lacks ownership. Another symptom, wondering if you're a bottleneck or not, is that you feel overworked and burnt out. You're the last one to go home, first one to come in, you're working weekends, you get frustrated sometimes that your team's not working as hard as you. This is also a sign of being the bottleneck, that you're having these feelings of overwhelm, overwork. In fact, you might even have a little resentment towards your team because of this. And the last thing is that you feel like things aren't moving forward as well. So workflow is hindered. So for instance, you may have designed this great plan and vision for where you want to go as your business, but you feel like implementation just isn't happening and people aren't doing the tasks they need to move things forward. And again, often these are just symptoms that you're probably bottlenecking your own organization, which doesn't allow you to scale and doesn't allow you to really grow that business you probably want for yourself. So what's the cause of these symptoms? You know, there's a lot of things that are helping to support these symptoms, especially from an entrepreneur's perspective. One of the first things is entrepreneurs have to have the ability to start saying no. Any leader, really, when you think about this, when you're first starting off, whether you're starting your business or you're starting your career, you probably were taking a lot of tasks and helping to make decisions, and then you get promoted to manager or your business grows as an entrepreneur. Then all of a sudden, more decisions need to be made, and they keep coming to you because you get things done. What happens as you grow, the decisions get more complex, and there's many more decisions that need to be made. And it ends up that part of your success has been saying yes to jumping in and solving things. But as you grow, it's not scalable. And so this inability to say no is really critical. In fact, I have a book highlighted there called Essentialism. And Greg McKeown talks about this, and that how you cannot be the only decision maker, and yet we've been rewarded for being the decision maker as we're building our businesses or building our career. The other aspect is people won't give up the reins. And part of this is, I hear this often, I know I can do it quicker, I can do it better, I know how to do it, instead of trying to train someone to do it or hoping they're going to make the right decision. And so another thing is going on is that these leaders won't give up the reins. And with that, it causes this bottleneck and this control so that people are afraid to make decisions because they're always going to have to just come back to you to get approval. Another thing that happens, it's a natural phenomenon I'm going to talk about, is the leadership pipeline. This was a book by the same name, The Leadership Pipeline, written by two Harvard professors. And these professors studied pre and post the dot-com bust and the boom and bust from the late 90s, early 2000s. And they saw that the companies that were able to scale and grow and are still around today had leadership teams that were able to move through the leadership pipeline. And they weren't being stuck in a certain function or a certain role within their organization. And so one way to think about this too, I'll talk about a little bit later, is, you're probably doing tasks you shouldn't be doing anymore, and yet you've always done them within your organization. We see this a lot with entrepreneurs who are wearing every task, and then sometimes it's hard for them to start letting go. The other reason the bottleneck is happening, your role is not evolving. I'm going to dig deeper into this concept as well. But as organizations change and you're growing, both as a leader and as an entrepreneur, your role needs to be evolving every 6 months to every 12 months because you're growing so quickly and the needs of the organization are different. And most people in this bottleneck syndrome, where they can't seem to break through the next level of performance, they're still operating and playing the role that they've always done because it got them to that point, and so they think what they're doing is successful. But it starts hindering their growth if they don't start shifting their role and letting go of things. And the other reason this is happening is that we often find there's a lack of trust. Interesting enough, the lack of trust isn't of the team to the leader, it is of the leader to the team. The trust that they're not going to get it done as good as you, that they're going to make a mistake that may cost you money, may cost you time, may cost you a customer. But when you think of trust and making mistakes, it's a natural part of learning. This style of not trusting to delegate isn't going to be scalable for you. You got to trust your people. Most team members want you to trust them. Most people want to do a good job for you. And so why the bottleneck may be happening for you is that you may have this inability to say no because you're used to being the decision maker, the crisis manager. You're not willing to give up the reins. You're not willing to let go yourself. You kind of like being in that role. You might also be dipping down the leadership pipeline. You have capable people. I often hear people say I have a great management team. They don't seem to take on any responsibility. And that's not the management team's fault. That's your fault as the leader. Your role often not revolving. And again, this lack of trust. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about a couple of these concepts. Again, this is a book called The Leadership Pipeline. And this is an element of the pipeline. But it gets back to, as you move forward as an organization, that your role needs to change. So if you're a small entrepreneur, you might be that manager, that staff. You start off doing everything. You're now leading some people on your team, might leading a few managers. But then as you build your management team, you got to start moving into that executive role. And it's really about leading the organization and setting the vision and where are we going to go in the future. Dipping down the leadership pipeline is when you are doing tasks on the left side of this chart, when you should be doing stuff on the right side of this chart. So how does this show up? It shows up a couple ways. Say you've been the main revenue generator, the sales guy. You built the business, and you've been out there getting all involved, and now you have salespeople working. and selling deals, and you may hear them talking to customers on the phone or potential customers, and you jump in and say, oh, I would do it this way or that way. It's like you start engaging yourself into your team to try to help them do it exactly how you want to do it. But what you're doing is actually dipping down the leadership pipeline. You're not allowing those salespeople to learn it on their own and come to you for advice if it doesn't work. They have to be able to experience it. It's one of those things, if someone keeps telling you what to do, you're never going to learn how to do it yourself, right? And so people need to learn. They need to make mistakes. But this dipping down the leadership pipeline, another way to evaluate this or look at this, I say you want to make $200,000 a year. At $200,000 a year, your hourly rate would be about $100 an hour. And so can you imagine if you, as $100 an hour, are still managing all your AP and AR and inputting tasks? Can you imagine you're still doing contracts? Can you imagine if you're still doing cold calling? Can you imagine if you're still the main lead on projects or things that need to get implemented for your customers? You're the main lead dealing with your vendors. The reality is you could probably get someone at a lower price point hourly to do those functions for you. And you're actually hindering your growth of your business. So maybe you can get someone at $20 an hour or $30 an hour to start taking on some of those tasks so that you at $200 an hour can actually be playing at the executive level within your organization versus at a management or staff level. This concept is easy just to talk about. It's harder to apply, and it gets back to that entrepreneur willing to say no and willing to let go. The other concept is how you spend your time as a leader. If you look at this in your organization, supervisor, managers, executives, you can see there's three buckets that people should be spending their time. Technical, which is what I call tactical or technical, or the day-to-day things that you need to get done. They're all those day-to-day functions you need to follow through on. They're talking to the customer and doing contracts for the client and doing your P&L reports and financials and all those technical daily things. The conceptual is going to be more strategic. Where are we going? What's our strategy? How is my team doing? How are we doing on our numbers? Where are we going in the future? What's the marketplace doing? What are our competitors doing? It's really spending time more on the strategy of the organization. And then the relationship piece, as you can see, is a bulk of all these areas. And relationships is really coaching and developing your managers and leaders. It's working with your customers, your vendors, any associations you may be involved in. And as you notice from supervisor to manager to executive, the technical or tactical becomes much smaller and the conceptual should become much larger. And that means as an executive that you should be focused on growing and implementing change versus doing day-to-day tactical aspects within your organization. And so most entrepreneurs, where do you think they get stuck? They actually get stuck way over on the supervisor side. In fact, I'd probably say the folks that come to us or try to have that breakthrough performance may even have that technical or technical side as half to 3/4 of their role, doing less conceptual, except maybe on the drive home or on the weekends, or thinking strategy, and probably less on the development of their people. You know, it's when you think about this, think of Gallup's poll about employee engagement they do every year. And, you know, they say 2/3 of employees aren't engaged in the workplace. And that part of that, people are willing to leave companies to get a more engaged manager and helping them develop their skills. So if you're not spending time in developing your people, how are they going to make better decisions? How are you going to delegate to them? And how are you going to trust them to move the plan you want forward? So it might be interesting to evaluate where you're spending your time, and then what are the skills, strategies, or processes you need to put in place to start making that shift to truly be an executive of your organization where you can be driving future change, driving future product development, driving your managers to be more effective. But without that, you're going to end up that roller coaster syndrome I first talked about today. The next thing I just want to talk about is trust. And I talk about this a lot if you've been on some of my other webinars. And the reason I talk about trust a lot is that all relationships are based on trust, whether it's personal relationships, business relationships with employees, customers, or vendors. There's trust. And what we find is that leaders who are not scaling their company are often breaking trust with their team in a couple of areas. And this is where the leader's telling me those symptoms is I don't trust my employees. I feel like they're not taking ownership. But in reality, what's going on is the leader hasn't set clear expectations or has clear accountability. Or in the innovation area, the leader hasn't really allowed people to make mistakes. And when someone makes a mistake, you get into trouble versus making a mistake and learning from it. And that one distinction is where the people were willing to take on more responsibility. If people can make a mistake, and it's how you respond to that mistake will allow those individuals to either want to take on more responsibility or less. I had an experience many years early in my career. I was 28 years old. Seems like a long time ago. But I was 28 years old. I was running this division in the state of Texas for this company. And we did some acquisitions a few years earlier. And I had to make some changes of personnel. And I made some sweeping changes of staff throughout the state. And a group of them got together and decided to sue the organization and sue myself. They said it was based on discrimination as to why I was doing it. The case never made it to court. It was thrown out. There was no validity to it. But the thing that I remember most is the president of the organization sent me a letter. And we didn't have email back then. Sent me a letter. And he said, I hear all these things that are going on and things that you're trying to transition in Texas. I understand that you just had this situation, this lawsuit. And he goes, but I want to tell you, we're back behind you 100%. Keep making great decisions. And at our next meeting, can you come and explain to the other district managers how you approach this so that we can learn from this situation? Let me know if you need anything else. So you can imagine, as a 28-year-old running this division, thinking, wow, he's praising me from learning from any mistakes I made. He wants me to make more decisions, and he wants me to teach other people how to learn from my mistakes as well. So you can imagine the freedom that gave me to want to take on more decisions, more responsibility. So I spent some time on this because it's one of the things we see often is that the leaders just won't let go or trust their people. Remember, most people want to do a good job for you. So trust them, guide them, spend your time on that relationship side, educating them on what you want and what your expectations are to make the right decisions. So we've talked about some of the symptoms. We talked about why some of these things happen. And let's talk a little bit about some solutions. So if you look at this thing, what I call the collaborative leader, a collaborative leader is always about striving to be authentic, purposeful, and impactful. So being authentic and transparent, being purposeful in our actions, and being impactful. And impactful to me as a leader, if you're not able to get things done through others, then you're not a good leader. And so a collaborative leader knows how to get things done through others by building an authentic and purposeful and impactful environment. So part of that is, I would recommend you do a role assessment. Make a list of all the things you're spending your time on. And look at that list and evaluate, can someone else be doing some of these tasks? Can someone else at a lower pay grade be doing some of these tasks? What are the things I don't want to be doing anymore? Who could they go to? And by when can I get them off my list? And what do I need to do to train them? But have a role assessment. You should be spending your time, if you're a leader of a business, a chunk of your time on strategy. And that means planning for the future. How is my company doing? What are we doing over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months to move this organization forward? How are my managers performing? What's going on with our customer service? Anything on the horizon I need to be aware about, a future recession, things like that, we got to start preparing for. And so if you're not spending your time on those things, you need to get other things off your plate. And that's where this role assessment comes in. Whoops, sorry guys, I went too quickly there with my finger. The next thing is true alignment. So what I mean by getting alignment is getting your team bought into your vision and getting them, asking them, what are the things that they think they can handle and take off your plate? You'll be surprised if you ask your team, they already know the things you're doing that they think they can do or handle. They could be growth opportunities for them, things for them to learn. So getting alignment with them that you want to change, you want to be a different type of leader, you want to grow to be that leader that is matching where you should be spending your time, well, get alignment with them on there. And I say alignment versus agreement because you may have some people, even though it's good change and they may want to do that, maybe afraid to take on that extra responsibility just based on the past way you've dealt with decisions. So get alignment that, hey, this is the path we're going. I want to change as a leader. Help me do that. If you were to do your role assessment, if you were to look at your alignment of your team, if you were to also create a new role for yourself of where you want to be, take off all those tasks you don't want, and you might be a role where you want to be 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 18 months from now. I have found most of our clients, most of our entrepreneurs love this because they know they're doing tasks they shouldn't be doing anymore. And they love to know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel and there's a path to move to that next level. We worked with a young tech company a few years back, and we did this for the CEO and the COO, the two partners of the business. It was amazing. We had their 6-month role, we had their 12-month role. Guess what? Within the first 3 months, they already had moved to the 6-month role. Within the 6th month, they moved to the 12-month role. They moved so quickly because what happened as they started to shift their roles and spend time on where they should be happening, their team elevated, thus they got to elevate and play where they should be playing. The last thing is delegate. It's one of those things that seems to be the hardest things for leaders to do. And we all know why, because you think you can do it quicker and faster than someone else. The only way people are going to learn is you have to delegate. We often find that people aren't clear on the freedom scale of how to delegate. So the freedom scale, we have a white paper that we can attach to our follow-up email for you. But the freedom scale allows you to determine your decision-making parameters. So for instance, you want nobody at the 4 and 5 level of the freedom scale. 4 and 5, number 5 is they're just waiting to be told what to do. Okay, so they're not going to do anything. They're not going to take on any extra responsibilities. We just can't have people playing in that 4 to 5 level. At level 3, you have someone coming to you with recommendations, but you're making the decision. At level 2, they're making the decision, but they're letting you know right away. And at level 1, they're making the decision and just letting you know at your next regular one-on-one meeting or team meeting. So if you think about the freedom scale with delegation, if you were able to make a list of things you wanted to delegate off your plate, you can start identifying with folks saying, hey, Jane, I want to delegate this to you, and right now you have freedom level 3. That means that you are going to come to me with recommendations, but I'm still going to make the decision. And once you get comfortable with your recommendations, you say, okay, Jane, I'm now moving you to level 2. You can now handle this. I trust you to handle this. And you can now move to her to level 2, and she can just keep you informed to the goal of eventually freedom level 1. Jane, just handle those issues and just keep me updated at our regular one-on-one meetings or team meetings. There is a method to delegation. Most people try to go to freedom 1 first, and then the people don't do what they want them to do, or they don't feel they have the trust, so they go back, the leaders go back to level 4 or 5 level and not delegating effectively, and then thus become the bottleneck. This freedom scale and how you delegate to me is really critical in allowing you to move forward, because you have to delegate. You have people around. Your people want you to delegate, and it's a way for them to learn and grow as leaders as well. And so if you're not delegating, you're not allowing your people to grow and develop. Now, at the end of the day, building a business and building a team is hard work. Leadership is hard, and it's hard because you never get there, right? You're always having to develop your skills. You're always having to push yourself to the next level, push your team to the next level. But you cannot run a business successfully when you are the bottleneck. So if you find that you're burnt out, you're resentful of your people not taking on responsibility, feels like you can't let go of things, then you're probably the bottleneck and preventing you from really having that breakthrough performance you want for yourself, your team, and your company. So I see we have a couple questions here. I have a few minutes left. And let me see. Oh, this is funny. This guy, Will, says, this sounds great, but what if I don't have time to do this? So part of it is you're probably so far, Will, and I'm assuming maybe in the tactical side of your business of doing day-to-day, that how can you not make time to start figuring this out? You'll never get out of it. One way to think about this is I call it working on your business time. Every successful leader each week carves out an hour, 2 hours. The higher up the food chain you are, could be 4 hours a week. But it's an hour or 2 hours uninterrupted, no phone, no email, no interruptions. That is really your thinking time and your strategy time. So if you just did this, so let's say this coming week, you took an hour and blocked out and made a list of all the things you want to take off your plate. And then the next week you took another hour and said, who can these go to? And how can I move these things forward? You'll be amazed just by having that hour or 2 hours every week working on your business time to really focus on how do you get out of being the bottleneck. You can move your organization forward. It is one of the simplest things you could do, and your team will value it, but more importantly, you will value having that time to actually work on these projects. And that working on your business time, to me, is one of the more critical elements of moving an organization forward. You need thinking time, but contrary to how we grew up or contrary to how we operate our businesses, we are always tactical and getting things done and doing things. And it's a hard shift sometimes for people to move to thinking time because it's less tactical. It's less, there's more vague. What am I supposed to do during this hour? Well, if you were just to take your time and start focusing on not being the bottleneck anymore, I bet you'll start seeing results. I see another question here. How do I rally my team to help me do this and become a better leader? And this is from Jesse. And well, Jesse, think about it. Have an open, authentic conversation with your team. Sit them down. Have them take the collaboration assessment, one on trust. It really, the collaborative leader assessment allows us to see where people think things are working and not working in the working relationship with you. And it gives you an opportunity to really have an authentic conversation that you want to change. You want them to become stronger. You want them to take on more responsibility. And you want to become a better leader. And have an open conversation. Ask them for feedback. And it's a lot of hard time. We're all human, right? Even myself, we do the collaborative leader assessment on myself in our company every 6 months. And it's still hard. I know this stuff. I know I'm supposed to be a good leader, but I don't always hit the marks. There's always room for me to improve, but you have to be open to hearing that feedback. And so I was having an authentic conversation with them and asked them. Their willingness to share will be dependent on how open you are to hearing. So whatever they're sharing with you, just listen. Don't get defensive. Don't make excuses. Just listen, because that will allow them to know that you truly want to hear and you're not going to fight whatever they're saying. Because the reality is whatever they're saying is their perception. So listen to it. Don't get defensive on it. And the last question I have here is from Chris. I'm not good at delegating. How do you suggest I start? Well, I think I've given a couple ideas, Chris. Making your list. I might do a couple things. One, you might want to look at some good books. I might look at Essentialism. There's some other Getting Things Done by David Allen, which is a good book. I also might recommend making your list that you want to get off your plate and sitting down with some of your key team members and asking them which of these tasks they want to learn and take on, and that you need to start moving these off your plate. and get them into helping to take those things off your plate. Your team wants you to be more effective. Your team wants you to be more successful. So if you're not doing that and you're the bottleneck, they get frustrated because they want better things for your company, better things for you as a leader. So sit down and get them involved in asking questions on how they can start delegating. The other thing is with delegation, make sure people are clear on the expectations. So if I want to give Jack a task, Jack, are you clear what I'm hoping to get done with this? How are you going to approach these things? Ask questions. Don't tell them how to do it, but ask questions to get them thinking the way you think. So that next time that issue comes up, Jack will start thinking the way you think because he knows if he comes to you, you're just going to be asking questions about his thought process and solving it. And that's truly what you want to do. You want to give your team how you think and your thought processes and moving forward. So make sure they're thinking critically, okay? I get a little passionate about this, but I could easily stand here on this webinar and say these steps, what you should do. I know it's not easy because we're also running a business. We also have our own behaviors we have to shift, but if you will never get out of the roller coaster. You will never get out of this bottleneck syndrome if you don't decide to start making some change now. And it's up to you as the leader. It's up to you as an entrepreneur. I do want to thank you today for taking time for our webinar. If you're interested in learning more about our services, please reach out to us at Collaboration. We're truly about inspiring, educating, and empowering leaders for breakthrough performance. So if you're interested in really moving your team and yourself as a leader to a new level of performance, please reach out. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to really help you build that business you've always wanted. Thank you very much, and I hope you have an amazing day.